Today I'd like to continue our discussion of the book Undoing the Knots by Maureen O'Connell. We took a look in our previous video about a situation in Philadelphia in 1985 when the Black Liberationist Group meaning the movement, was really kind of burned out of their homes, and terrible, kind of outrageous scene where 61 homes in the Cobbs Creek neighborhood in West Philadelphia were destroyed, and 250 residents became homeless. The United States bishops issued a document to deal with racism, because we raise questions, well, what is the church doing when these kind of outrageous things are happening in our society? They issued a document called Brothers and Sisters to Us in 1979. And really what it did is it couched racism in interpersonal terms rather than structural ways or as an institutional abuse of power. And unfortunately, what we see in terms of the racial conflict in our country, and in other countries as well, of course, is that a lot of times the racism is embedded in a particular structure, and that has to be addressed, and that structure in some way has to be dismantled. Whether it's a structure of healthcare, whether it's an economic structure in terms of job opportunities, an educational structure, those structures have to be attended to. We have to say, well, what in that structure is out of balance? Obviously, in the situation in Philadelphia in 1985, where these homes were destroyed and so many people were left homeless, people were killed, the structure had to do with the policing that was involved in that situation. It was certainly inappropriate. It was certainly excessive. It was horrible, really. And so, as a church, you have to kind of look at that and say, well, let's speak out about this institution, this policing, this law enforcement, supposedly law enforcement, but really no law. It's really the opposite of law enforcement. This structure is wrong. The structure has evil in it. The structure has to be dismantled, changed in some way. We found out not only the horror of this, but that the city officials had mishandled the remains of 2 of the children. So not only was there this terrible outrage, there was these 4 children, that their remains mishandled. Now, in terms of the diocese, what was their response? Monsignor Charles Devlin at that time was director of the Cardinal's Commission on Human Relations, and this was the commission that was supposed to handle these types of situations. He expressed concerns about the city's starvation blockade to evict the group. He said, well, wait a minute, why is the city doing this? They're putting a blockade to evict these people. This is wrong. This should not be the process that is used. Starve people to death. I mean, this is ridiculous. Some Catholics were upset with him. So you have this division within the church. You have a leader of this commission saying one thing, and Catholics attacking him. This is the unfortunate situation you have, where many Catholics don't have this vision of equality, of racial harmony, of working with other racial groups. This blame the victim concept is consistent throughout our society, and the Catholics fall into it as well. He also had opposition from the mayor, Mayor Frank Rizzo, a Catholic, the mayor of the city at the time. He said, no, this is what we have to do. And so because of the opposition of some Catholics, because of the opposition from the mayor, the Monsignor stepped away from the situation. Of course, the cardinal, who was head of the archdiocese, made no statement, no intervention this time. So here you have, at best, inadequate, at worst, horrible leadership from the Catholic Church in the city at the time. And this is what we mean by looking at the racism within the church, these attitudes that take place within the Catholic Church. Move was never mentioned in Marine's Catholic education growing up. So she grew up, and this incident was like it never happened. Well, wait a minute, this is something in your own community. Shouldn't you as a church, educate your students about it, deal with it? It's happening. Why deny it? Why ignore it? It doesn't seem to make any sense. These are young people growing up in a world where they have to face this type of situation, face this type of racism. And shouldn't your Catholic education embrace this, have something to say about it? But no, silence was the response. In Philadelphia, there are 3,500 community murals throughout the city. None about Move. None about this incident. You say, well, wait a minute. I mean, these people were killed. I mean, this was a terrible act. Wouldn't you think that some of those community murals would address this situation? So in these communities of silence, white supremacy really ruled. The white people were right. What the police did was right. These black people were wrong. They were mobilizing against the city. They were trying to raise awareness. They shouldn't do that. They should just be quiet. The status quo is good. The white people are doing well. Everything is fine. Why rock the boat? When you get opposition from people in the church, just walk away, be quiet. When the mayor is defending it, just be quiet. Don't rock the boat. Don't get involved. This is the message that you were sending to the Catholic community, unfortunately. When you think about it, and you think about World War II and the aftermath of World War II, Maureen points out, where did the advantage go in terms of the GI Bill? It went to the white vets, didn't go to the black vets. Well, the black veterans served equally. Why wouldn't it, again, it seems this inequitable treatment prevails in our society. And what we mean by structural racism is taking a critical look at that. We as Catholics are very ignorant of our own history of racism, unfortunately. Charles Carroll, for example, the only Catholic who signed the Declaration of Independence, had 400 to 500 slaves. What Maureen's going to do now in her book is unpack some of that history of racism within the church so we can reflect